Okay, so we're gonna make a wisteria basket. You're gonna take a blade, make it relatively sharp. You're gonna walk into a place where you see wisteria vines, and you're gonna look for these long straight pieces running across the ground. Those are the runners, the rhizomes. You're gonna want to cut as long a pieces, like follow them back and get long pieces of those, so you'll have a lot of straight, super bendy, supple material to work with. Um, Ooh, you might get poison ivy. So scrub off your arms and legs when you get out of the woods. The parts that grow up the trees, the actual vines, they kind of curly Q around, and they're not quite as easy to work with building baskets. Um, so you're gonna have to coil these up because you got to move a whole bunch of footage of vine out of the woods. So I usually peel a piece of bark and use it as cordage to carry it out like this. Then you're going to take, a vine in cross section would be circular, tubular, if you will. So set a knife down in the center and rock it back and forth, pressing down. You're going to froe down, FROE, down about maybe 3 or 4 inches till you can get a good hand grip on either side. And then you're going to begin to peel it down by hand, shown here. Um, so this is a relatively big vine, so you're going to be able to peel it all the way down. Don't let one side get too skinny and the other side get too fat. You can kind of adjust as you go. That's a matter of handcraft. Either come see me and I'll show you how to do it, or just peel and make the road by walking. So with a big vine like this, you might be able to easily take one of the halves um, and half that. So basically, you're gonna be working until we can get a bunch of long, flat pieces, which are called splints. And of course, you can weave those really tight up against one another, them being flat. And that's what you're going for. You're going to hit knots and things of that nature in a lot of these. And you might have to use your knife to kind of cut and even the pieces out and stuff when it becomes difficult. But you see that is doable, and certainly with a little bit of experience, you get pretty good at making them not uniform, but relatively, close enough. I mean, you could use a draw knife and all kinds of fancy stuff. I just prefer working with the limitations of just a regular stainless steel knife and my hands. Generally speaking, after I peel these down to usable splints and weavers, then I use two basic lengths. Generally speaking, one, I put the end of the weaver to the center of my chest and measure out to the tip of my finger, and then cut a whole bunch of times, or basically my whole wingspan. You could also like step on the end and do to the top of your head, like things without having a tape measure or having. Those are usually like easily standardized, sort of lengths. Once I get them split, you'll notice that I've peeled this one down to bare wood, and I'm gonna do that. Like I said, you can use the bark. It peels off relatively easily during the spring and summer, and so leaving this really pretty bare wood. But also you can use it as a kind of weaving material and cordage. And you'll see me in a second splitting actually the inner from the outer bark, because they can have very different uses. You can also leave them together and it's like super friggin' strong. But the handles of this basket are going to be made out of 100% bark, inner and outer bark material that I've peeled off. Anyway, you're highly liable to, you'll notice me correcting when one side got too skinny, one side got too fat. I'd cut a notch in order to even them out as I'm peeling here. You're liable to get a whole bunch of mess as you're doing this, it'll get tangled up and things of that nature. That's why it's important to coil up pieces that you've finished as you're working. Otherwise, like I said, it can be a big frustrating mess. I've intentionally left these clips kind of long in order for you to get some idea of the meditative nature of moving your hands like this. I can't recommend it highly enough. Of course, something like knitting or even snapping peas has, I think, a similar quality where the plant teaches you without words and through your hands. The logic of the hands teaches you something that words just simply cannot. This is, like I said, me separating outer from inner bark. So I basically cut about halfway and then separate the two. This can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes you'll have pieces of outer bark stuck to the inner bark and stuff like that. It'll take a little bit of finagling, but it's way easy on Wisteria in a way that I've seen very few weavable plants be. So here we're gonna coil stuff back up because I generally speaking, I don't have like a huge egg, like trough tub or anything like that. So generally speaking, I soak my pieces. They get dry and brittle pretty quick. On a sunny, hot, windy day or anything like that, you'll have to soak your stuff pretty often when it starts getting brittle on you. So here's a bunch of bark that I was soaking on the side of the Bongo River in order for me to work with. Here I am shimming down some more splints when I'm at the riverside. But basically, yeah, I'll put a big stone in the basket and soak it on the bottom of the river or something like that. So give that a thought. Working with something when it's green works pretty well, and it'll stay supple and bendable and stuff like that. But as soon as it starts to dry on you, it'll be liable to snap, and you sure don't want that. So I would say either like have a dunk tank that you can keep something submerged in, or be on the side of the river with something heavy enough to sink it. Here we are with all of our big splints, so we're going to start on the bottom, the base of the basket. A couple things. I don't like working with a super sharp knife because I've hurt myself before. I prefer kind of a medium. Honestly, for everything besides cutting the vines loose, you can just work with a fucking steak knife or something relatively dull. So for this one, I just used the same over under that you would for like the like a pie or something like that, right? Once I've gotten the base about as broad as I want it to be, you gotta turn up the sides. You can do this by hand, and you'll get a much more like free form shape. Or if you actually base it around like a box you make, or a bucket or something, you will actually have like a tighter form. Here's me. As I've finished the base, I am twining and tying basically them so that they don't get loose as I'm turning all those weavers sticking out up in order to make the walls of this basket. I'm using a piece of inner bark, you'll notice, so it's thin it can get into all the really tight spaces that I have right now. This basket isn't the tightest weave on the planet, but it's tight enough to where it would be a pain in the butt for me to use like a round weaver or something of that nature. Be careful with your knife. Don't don't cut yourself. You know, a lot of times after the initial cutting of the vines, then I might want to even switch to a somewhat dull knife, or even like for sure you might want something like a wallering tool. Like you're gonna want to push down the weaver you're working with on top tightly against the last one you did as you're building up your basket. And with a super sharp knife, either you're gonna accidentally cut your weavers or cut yourself. So I'd recommend having something like a screwdriver or a butter knife or something to waller pieces down. Here you'll notice I have turned up the splints of my basket, the actual spokes, and the walls are somewhat built. That's why they're sticking up, right? But I'm soaking stuff. You'll notice I got the basket itself soaking, but also a bucket full of weavers sitting with me to get at pretty easy. Here I am finishing the last couple weaves, and then I put a rim around it, which is like a whole not splinted but peeled vine. In this case, you'll notice it's a round one, and then I tucked in all the spokes on one side and the other. You'll notice I did a really good job of not snapping some and then partial, and then some I had to cut because it was just untenable to try to turn it all the way over and tuck it back into the weave. Let me see. Yeah, there's my knife in there. This knife is like $7 or $8. I mean, for real, like, you know, you need not get too complicated with it. But here's me actually cutting some ends, kind of sharp enough and stiff enough in order to tuck back in. So this I actually got a decent angle on, I think. I must have had this between my the phone between my knees or something in order to get this angle, because I didn't really have any outside tools. Man, the top of my head got sunburned. But it was beautiful. I mean, several times I won't even be listening to anything besides the waves hitting, and the wind, you know, and the loblolly is the same thing that's been singing to me my whole life. So yeah, I wish that for you deeply. So here I am. I guess I got it through, and I got to pull. Although, like, sometimes I put my hand on the part where it's kind of like bent the hardest in order to sort of coerce it into not snapping as I get close. It's you weave how you live. So boy, if you're in a type of attitude, you're gonna end up breaking something. It's gonna let you know that your energy's wrong, you know. Weaving is the repetition of an intention, and if you try to muscle through it, Mother Nature lets you know the folly of your ways a lot of times. All right, yeah, all right, not bad. But you'll notice I'm like making my way around this this unsplit rim. Now I have a whole bunch of spokes that I gotta cut, and basically I've made my rim. So that was the rest of the rim itself. Here is the basket before I put handles on. Not bad, right? Here's me weaving the handles. I decided to make two. I wove these out of just bark. I think all of it is bark with the inner and outer still together in order for it to be strong. I like these baskets to be usable. I'm sure a lot of people just take pictures with their kids or something in them, or put flowers in them or something of that nature, but I try to make it so you can actually haul things. You know, one thing I was gonna say is another reason why we peel down to bare wood is that when you re-soak stuff, it actually gets supple and bendable real easy when it doesn't have bark on it. When it does have bark on it, a a lot of times it can get messy, slough off. It's liable to be harder to work with. So there's actually practical besides just aesthetic reasons to do so. I've never tried like dyeing or basically like staining the baskets, but I imagine that people always have. And if you leave one of these out on a wet day or whatever long enough, then it will definitely get a bunch of mildew spots on it pretty easy. So I'm sure there's some sort of ancestral thing to do. I just haven't ever done it. Let me see. Yeah, I made 3 spokes. I ran them side to side to side, and then I wove in between it, zigzagged from end to end, and I did that twice. Here's me cutting the last of the handle, I believe. Yeah, there we go. Ta-da!